From ornate mourning attire to post-mortem photography, it's very clear that the Victorians were obsessed with death and dying. But their obsessions extended to the strange side of life as well. Back in those days, sideshows or freak shows became wildly popular, thanks to photography, Darwin's theory of evolution, and the public's endless curiosity. Promoters knew exactly what sold, and each show aimed to be the biggest and most bizarre. In this video, we're going to tell you about the lives of 15 strangest circus freaks that actually existed. Let's kick off things with Number 15, the Venus of South America. Tono Maria didn't arrive on stage by choice. She was taken from her homeland in Brazil, a woman of the Amore people, and shipped off to perform in London freak shows in the early 1800s. They called her the Venus of South America. But what drew attention wasn't her name. It was her body. Her skin bore dozens of ritual scars, symbols of identity and culture. Promoters twisted that into a scandal, telling gawking crowds each mark was from an affair, each one a sign of wild desire. Her ear and lip plugs were labeled tribal disfigurements, and her dignity was turned into display material. Audiences didn't hear her language or know her story. She was a stranger, made stranger, sold as a warning and a thrill. We don't know where she ended up, but she left behind something deeper than a name, an image distorted by colonizers, studied by scholars, and remembered by those still untangling what spectacle once stole. Number 14, the wonderful albinos. Rudolph Lucasi didn't look like most people in Barnum's lineup, and that was exactly what made him profitable. With striking white hair and pale skin from albinism, he became a showpiece. So did his wife, Auntie Anna, and eventually their son Joseph, who was born in Germany in 1850. Together, they became a traveling family act, promoted as the Wonderful Albino Family. Barnum loved the image, foreign, strange, and perfect for mass reproduction. The family was sketched, photographed, and stamped onto collectible cards. Joseph learned to play the violin and stood center stage, not just as a curiosity, but as a performer. Crowds called them sun-fearing, a nickname crafted more for myth than fact. They were paid well by sideshow standards, but even that didn't stop tensions. When arguments flared, Barnum threatened to replace their manager entirely. After a fire destroyed the museum in 1865, the family vanished from his lineup. But their faces, posed, pale, and frozen in glass, never stopped being stared at. Number 13, the man with two faces. Sam Alexander didn't set out to become a sideshow performer. He wanted to act. He loved theater, lights, and stories. But that changed after a gasoline explosion left his face burned. The lower half couldn't be saved. Reconstructive surgery was slow and expensive, and time wasn't on his side. For a while, he disappeared, recovering, adjusting, grieving. Then, a young doctor crafted a custom mask for him. It was realistic enough to blend in, but Sam didn't use it to hide. He stepped onto circus stages instead, performing for Ringling Bros, Barnum and Bailey, and the Clyde Beatty Circus. His act was simple. He'd tell his story and then take the mask off. He didn't ask for sympathy. He asked people to see him. Later, he started his own troupe and kept performing, mask and all, even after surgeries offered better options. Sam died in 1997. His face might have been changed forever, but what people remembered was the moment he took control of it. Number 12, the Yorkshire Giant. William Bradley wasn't just a spectacle. He was a kid from Market Weighton who happened to grow beyond what anyone thought possible. By the time he was fully grown, he stood 7 feet 9 inches tall. It wasn't a world built for someone like that. At school, he became a discipline tool. Teachers made him lift misbehaving kids off the floor like it was part of the curriculum. As a teenager, he worked on farms for almost nothing, but his size quickly became more profitable than any field work. He started traveling with showmen, even sharing billing with the Yorkshire Pig, and quickly became one of the country's most talked-about acts. Eventually, he started exhibiting himself independently, charging admission, and even caught the attention of King George III. He didn't live long, 33 years, but his town never forgot him. He was buried inside the church to stop grave robbers, and his name still gets celebrated every July at Giant Bradley Day. Number 11. Joan Wisnant. Joan didn't have hands, but she didn't waste time wishing for them. She was born without arms, and by the time most kids learned to tie their shoes, she was already teaching her toes to do everything else. Cooking, sewing, brushing her hair, she figured it out without fanfare. When her feet wrapped around a guitar, something changed. What had once been seen as a limitation suddenly became talent. Her parents never tried to hide her away, but they didn't push her into the freak show circuit either. Joan made that call herself. She played on Ripley's stages and local fairs, always barefoot, always calm, always in control. When people laughed, she played louder. When they watched closely, she never looked away. Her shows weren't pity parties, they were skill, pride, and presence. Joan passed in 1998, not rich or famous, but remembered by those who saw her. She didn't just live without hands, she lived fully, and she played like no one else. Number 10. Carl Norwood. Carl Norwood didn't have a stage name that made posters pop. He didn't swallow swords or breathe fire. His body, shortened and reshaped by a rare condition, did the talking. He started performing as a teenager, working beside Dick Hilburn, another man making a living off how others stared. The two didn't put on acts, they stood there. That was enough to keep the crowds coming. When Hilburn passed, Carl kept going, traveling with Hilburn's widow, then under the rough grind of Ward Hall's show. There was no glamour. The pay was small, the hours long, the stares constant. But Carl kept showing up. He had nothing to prove, and still, every show he gave something real. Presence. He died at 37 in Atlanta. Quietly. No articles, no fame. Just one more person who lived on the margins, worked through pain, and made people look at difference without apology. That alone made him unforgettable, even if most forgot his name. Number 9. Baby Bunny Smith. Helen Smith didn't come from show business, but her body made her a permanent act. By age 13, her weight had already drawn attention, and she left school to join a traveling sideshow. Billed as Baby Bunny Smith, she was advertised the way most women like her were back then, as a fat lady, something to be stared at and weighed like livestock. But behind the stage makeup and posters, she had a life. In Coney Island, she met Peter Robinson, a man who weighed just 58 pounds. The contrast was used for promotion, but it wasn't fake. They really did fall for each other. They raised 2 children, toured together, and eventually appeared in the cult film Freaks in 1932. For a while, they were simply a family that worked together in a brutal line of work. Helen died in the early 1950s, never rich, never anonymous, and never just the label they gave her. She lived with it all, and still made a very massive space for love. Number 8. The Double-Bodied Boys. Giacomo and Giovanni Battista Tocci were born fused at the lower abdomen, likely in northern Italy around 1877. Their bodies shared one pair of legs but held 2 spines, 4 arms, 2 hearts, and 2 distinct personalities. Their father exhibited them while they were still infants, and they spent their early years wheeled between cities and countries, including a 5-year tour across the U.S. They didn't walk and had to be carried or pushed during performances. Giacomo was talkative and cheerful, while Giovanni stayed quiet and withdrawn. Together they spoke several languages and reportedly fought often, even resorting to punches. When they'd earned enough, they bought a home near Venice and disappeared from public life. Some said they married twin sisters. Others claimed they became reclusive and childless. Their death date was never confirmed. No one really knows what happened after the curtain dropped. But for a short time, they were living proof that the human body could defy every rule of design. Number 7. The human toolbox. Well, now this one is simply mind-blowing. Brad Byers never needed special effects, just a handful of steel, a steady hand, and nerves of iron. Born and raised in Idaho, he joined a circus straight after high school and began as a juggler. But once he swallowed his first sword, he never looked back. Over the decades, he performed in more than 20 countries, setting Guinness World Records and appearing twice on America's Got Talent. One record remains legendary: 12 swords, each 27 inches long, swallowed and twisted inside his throat before being pulled out unharmed. The nickname "the human toolbox" stuck after he hammered nails into his nose, pulled chains through his face, and even let a spinning drill hover millimeters from his brain. In one act, his brother drove a quad bike across him as he lay on a bed of nails. Byers calls it art, not endurance. And maybe that's what makes him unforgettable. He turned pain into precision and fear into fascination. So, what do you think about him? Number 6. The original living skeleton. Calvin Edson wasn't born into the sideshow world. He arrived there through hardship. A veteran of the War of 1812, he served in freezing conditions during the Battle of Plattsburgh, and after that, his body began wasting away. Doctors never agreed on why. By adulthood, he weighed just 45 pounds and stood a little over 5 feet tall. But he wasn't sick or bedridden. He danced, traveled, and spoke clearly on stage. In the 1820s and 30s, he toured as Jeremiah Thin, often wearing black to make his bone-thin frame more dramatic. The newspapers ate it up. Stories circulated that he had a massive tapeworm, or that he'd already died and been dissected. He hadn't. He was married to a woman named Rachel and had 4 children, 2 born deaf and mute. While his appearance fed rumors, he quietly kept performing and providing. He eventually passed away, not from a mystery disease, but simply from age. The real story was never as strange as the headlines made it. Number 5. Betty Broadbent. Betty knew people would stare, so she gave them something to look at. She started getting tattooed as a teenager after meeting Jack Red Cloud, who introduced her to Charlie Wagner, one of the most famous tattoo artists of the time. It took 6 sessions to cover her body, over 560 tattoos, all by hand. Saints, soldiers, portraits, symbols. By the time she stepped onto the stage for Ringling Brothers in 1927, she was already known as the Tattooed Venus. She didn't just stand still either. She rode horses, trained steers, learned tattooing herself, and worked in cities across North America and even New Zealand. She entered a beauty contest at the 1939 World's Fair, not to win, but to make a point. Art wasn't just on paper, and beauty wasn't just bare skin. She toured for 4 decades before retiring in 1967. In 1981, she became the first person inducted into the Tattoo Hall of Fame. 2 years later, she passed quietly, already legendary. Number 4. The Skeleton Dude. Charles Arthur Maule was born in 1890, weighing just 2 pounds. No one thought he'd live. For the first 6 years of his life, he had to be carried on a pillow. He later used crutches to move around, but his body never filled out. As an adult, he weighed just 38 pounds. When he joined Barnum and Bailey in 1909, they rebranded him as the Skeleton Dude, and crowds came in droves. During off-season, he worked as a reporter in Chicago. He married a fellow performer named Mary Jelly Mae Berkeley, who played the contrast. She gained weight intentionally to emphasize how thin he was. They had 2 children, both healthy. Artie always denied rumors of starvation. He insisted his bones were just small and his appetite normal. He toured constantly until 1920, when he was struck by a car and died from a punctured lung. He was buried under his birth name, but he lived and died with a title that stuck forever. Number 3. Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. Stefan Bobrowski looked nothing like the crowds he stood in front of. Thick golden hair covered most of his face, head, and body, nearly 6 inches long in some places. To showmen, he was perfect. They called him Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. His mother believed her trauma during pregnancy caused it, a superstition people once called maternal impression. She gave him up, and he was raised by a promoter. What Stefan actually had was hypertrichosis, an extremely rare condition that caused excessive hair growth. But underneath the appearance was someone calm, intelligent, and fluent in 5 languages. He didn't rely on tricks or shock. He mostly just spoke to the audience. People came to stare, but many stayed to listen. He toured with Barnum and others across Europe and America before quietly retiring. He lived out his last years in Germany and died in 1932 at the age of 41. He wasn't a lion, just a man trying to be seen. Number 2, the Invulnerable Man. Arnold Garrett Henskes never hid behind stage tricks. As Miran Dejo, he stood calmly as swords were driven straight through his chest. No blood, no scream, just silence. Audiences thought it was fake. Doctors didn't. They x-rayed him mid-performance and confirmed it. The blade went clean through. Dejo said he was guided by spiritual visions and wanted to prove that the body could transcend pain. He spoke softly about peace, unity, and rejecting materialism. His act wasn't just about danger, it was a sermon. Some say he built up fistulas, scar tunnels, to make the act possible, but no one could prove it. In 1948, he claimed a voice told him to swallow a needle. He did. It was surgically removed, but days later, he collapsed and died from an aortic rupture. Whether it was spiritual belief or a body conditioned beyond reason, Dejo left behind one of the strangest medical x-rays ever taken and a story that still unsettles anyone who sees it. Number 1, the Kentucky Giant Fat Boy. John Hanson Craig didn't need advertising. His body made sure no one missed him. At 2 years old, he already weighed over 200 pounds. That alone earned him a prize in Barnum's Bonnie Baby contest. By adulthood, he crossed 900. They called him the Kentucky Giant Fat Boy and paraded him through towns like living cargo. But Craig wasn't just a sideshow piece. He had humor, charm, and his own business mind. He booked his own shows, negotiated his appearances, and kept working while raising a family. His first wife, Mary Jane, weighed nearly as much as he did. After she passed, he married Zella Ayers, a snake charmer who toured with him. They shared a life, not just a tent. He died at 39, not unexpectedly given his health, but still young. People remembered the weight. Few remembered how hard he worked, how many crowds he stood in front of, or how much he built around a body the world couldn't ignore. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like it, share it, and hit the subscribe button for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.